Good morning. Welcome to worship at the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence. I'm Rebecca Smith, the tech host for this service. We are a congregation with a tradition of liberal faith and committed social action. We uphold the principles and values of our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we strive to be a community where all are welcomed and included, without regard to age, race, or background, sexual orientation, gender identity, or abilities. We will now hear from Dave Roitman, one of the coordinators with USNF The Vote, who will co-lead today's service with Susie Macrae. Oops. Hold on.
Dave, you're muted.
You're muted, Dave. I'm let's see, participants.
Dave, I think you can unmute yourself.
All right, nothing like a little challenge. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay, it's great to be unmuted and to be with you. For many years, most of our summer services have been planned and led by members of the congregation, and I'm very glad to be here and to see you here. I want to thank our tech hosts, Rebecca Smith and Steve O'Day, for making this service possible. And I also want to thank the other USNF The Vote coordinators and our steering team for making voting rights a core activity in our social justice work. So that's Nancy Whittier, Susie Macrae, Molly Hale, Harriet Diamond, Nick Warren, Nancy Sardison, Kate Krukmeyer, and Janet Bush. Also thanks to Kim Wolfson and Carl Wolf for the great work they did to launch our USNF The Vote actions. And I also want to thank over 100 members of our community, many of those folks are on today, who have been working to protect and turn out the vote. So if you're new and would like to receive our weekly email news bulletin, please send an email to our office, which is office@uunorthampton.org. After the service today, something new. We'll be having a Q&A session about the annual meeting. And this will be a separate Zoom meeting that'll begin at 11 right after the service. Topics will include the budget for next year, ongoing work at the Society, and any other questions or concerns you may have. So please join us, and the link to the Q&A session will appear in the chat window. And we'll make sure you can get on if you want to. Our tech hosts are here to ensure our Zoom meetings go smoothly, and we ask that you turn off your video until that Q&A session by clicking on Stop Video on the bottom of your screen. Our helpers will put everybody on mute during the service, so please don't try to unmute. We will invite people to use the chat function to say hi to everyone during the community greeting. So otherwise, please use chat only for private messages so that it doesn't distract others. And now we'll begin our service. Okay, so I'm going to read a poem by a great African-American poet, Lucille Clifton. History is chasing you, America, yeah, like a mean dog. The only way to tame that dog is to turn and stare direct into its red eye. Old folks used to talk about this, how if you keep on running, it'll see you are afraid. How if you take a stand, it will take one with you. Old folks have watched this longer than you think. They have learned how mean that dog is, and they know it is your dog. Now over to Susie Macrae to light the chalice. Susie, you're on mute. There we go.
Sorry, I thought I had already unmuted and then I guess something happened. Please join in saying these words. We light our chalice as a beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning. We light our chalice as a beacon of love in celebration of the life we share together. Now join in singing.
All right, we have no audio on Old Hundredth at the moment.
There's going to be a video. So Rebecca, no audio yet on Old Hundredth. Rebecca, would you like me to lead it? If we're having trouble with the audio? Oh, here we go. There we go. I don't have a phone number. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I did have it up there. I guess you weren't seeing it.
Rebecca, we can't hear anything. I can lead Old Hundredth if that will be okay.
Oh, I just played Old Hundredth. You didn't see it?
Yeah, we didn't hear it. I don't know,
Oh.
maybe others did.
Okay.
Susie, were you able to hear Old Hundredth?
Okay, I could try it again. Let's see.
Why don't you let me lead it? Maybe that'll be better.
Okay. Yeah, I had it playing.
Yeah, but it didn't work, so.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm unmuted.
All right, I could try again here. Share screen. Old Hundredth.
No, that'll work.
You see it now? Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right, here we go.
Great.
Let His good will on earth be sung. Every line and tongue. Great God loves my heart.
Okay. So, Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good, Dave.
Okay. So, we're going to read a story together. And actually, I retitled this since that slide was put together. It's now called The Dream of Democracy. And the word dream is meant in the same way Martin Luther King Jr. used it in his March on Washington speech. Okay. Imagining a future that inspires us to do the work to get there, because we know we're nowhere near where we need to be. So we're pausing on slide 6. I'd like you to see the sources while I tell you where the story came from. I've been working on actions to protect and renew our democracy for about a year. And when Janet mentioned the opportunity to lead a summer service, I knew I wanted to do it mostly because I would have to then learn more about democracy. And from what I've read in the past few months, a few passages stood out, and that became this story. So Rebecca, could you pull up slide 7, please? Thank you. So the story begins with the ancient Greeks. Pericles, a leader in Athens, gave a speech to honor soldiers who had just perished defending their city. He spoke about what made Athens worth saving, and here's what he said about democracy. We are called a democracy. The government is in the hands of the many and not of the few. There exists equal justice to all in disputes, and when citizens are in any way distinguished, they are elected to the public service not as a privilege, but as the reward of merit. Poverty is not an obstacle. A spirit of reverence pervades our public acts. We are prevented from doing wrong by respect for laws, having regard to those which protect the injured. So Rebecca, please open slide 8. And as I thought about what I'd learned about democracy in school, I realized that the contribution of the Greeks and Europeans like Rousseau and John Locke had been highlighted, while little was said about Native Americans. So in exploring democracy sources and reading about the 6 nations, this passage emerged. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one, as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. The democracy of the 6 nations, also called the Iroquois Confederacy, were a major influence on the Constitution of the United States. And this quotation that I just read helps us understand the spiritual grounding that Native Americans brought to that process. Rebecca, please open the next slide. Thank you. So the relationship between the Iroquois and the founding fathers provides a window to our founding. And on the slide, you'll see a couple of things Ben Franklin had to say. Savages we call them because their manners differ from ours, which we think the perfection of civility. they think the same of theirs. Here's another, to me, shocking quote. It would be a very strange thing if 6 nations of ignorant savages should be capable of forming such a union and be able to execute it as it has subsisted ages and appears indissoluble, and yet that a like union should be impracticable for 10 or a dozen is more necessary. So here we see the core paradox of American democracy, founded by wealthy white men intending to preserve their privilege. The United States was set up to be a stage for ongoing struggle to break through the barriers, social, cultural, political, religious, all the barriers blocking us from living our lives as all people created equal. Next slide, please. There's Gloria. So, while reading about Ben Franklin and the Iroquois, who did I encounter but Gloria Steinem and this brilliant observation? Benjamin Franklin was well aware of the Iroquois Confederacy's success in bringing together Native nations for mutual decisions, but also allowing autonomy in local ones. He hoped the Constitution could do the same and invited 2 Iroquois men to Philadelphia as advisors. Among the first questions they asked was said to be, "Where are the women?" Gloria Steinem's words illuminate the nature of our struggle because they highlight the contrast between the role of women in Iroquois societies as contrasted with Western European, and the importance of culture to understanding the work we have to do in order to live with justice, equity, and compassion. And you could read a little bit more on that previous slide. You probably see at the bottom how powerful a role that culture, women had in that culture. Thank you, Rebecca. We can go to the next slide now. Okay, sorry for the confusion. Okay, so in my journey to learn about democracy, it was starting to become clearer to me how fundamentally flawed our founding was. And these words you see on the slide, attributed to James Madison, brought the point home. Another shocker. The primary goal of government, James Madison said, is to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. The founders accepted divisions of wealth as a permanent feature of the political landscape, for to accept otherwise would have meant forsaking their own privilege and power. Yet, even as privileged landowners wrote laws to preserve their power, ever since our nation's origin, others have sought to create a democracy where the inherent worth and dignity of every person was a true guiding principle for government. So let's keep that slide up so you can take a look at the expressions and stances of the men in the picture and how it portrays the essence of our founding. And as you can see on that slide, Daniel Shays' rebellion happened right here, Hampshire County, Worcester County. Okay, Rebecca, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so let's fast forward to today's crises. At the end of her magnificent book, which you saw in the sources section, let's see if I can remember the name. Don't have it handy. Astra Taylor. Democracy may not exist, but if it did, it would be worth it. That's something like the title. It's impossible to say whether we are on the brink of catastrophe or democratic rebirth. Millions of Americans who never protested in their lives have taken to the streets with over 20,000 demonstrations between 2016 and 2018. Her book was published, I think, in 2019. Citizens are debating the anti-democratic structure of our political system. Ruling ourselves is not a predictable enterprise, but this is just as much a cause for jubilation as despair. This seemingly fatal flaw is also the source of democracy's strength. Instead of founding fathers, let us all aspire to be perennial midwives, helping always to deliver democracy anew. Okay, so we're going to move away to the story. And I think, Steve, if you could put the spotlight on me for a couple of minutes. Thank you. So when I began reading about democracy a few months ago, I had a rough sense of how flawed, ugly, and tragic our history had been. And now I know a bit more. I've learned to believe, as Astor Taylor says, that our democracy is not for saving. It needs to be reborn. Yes, it's a magnificent dream, and yes, we're on a perilous journey. So, here's a good song to help us on our way. We're going to sing this little light of mine. But before we sing it, here's a quick story. I first heard the song in 1965 in the basement of a Washington, D.C. church. About 100 of us, white folks from the North, were sitting around nervously waiting to get organized for the second March on Washington. No one was smiling. In comes the preacher and he greeted us like this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are so glad you're here, but you know, we're not going to get it done like this. We need some feeling in this room, so why don't you sing with me? And he started right in, this little light of mine. So we've got a few new lyrics for this little light, and gonna see if we got them up so you can see them. Yep, great. So guess what? The room just lit up when he started singing. And whenever I sing this song, I think of that moment. And let's bring that special feeling here right now, right here. So sing with me. I'm afraid you won't be able to hear anybody, I guess, but me, but let's sing together. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Whoa, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Don't you know this little light of mine? I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. New lyrics. Every vote is gonna count. This is our time. I hope you're singing. Every vote is gonna count. This is our time. I can hear you. Every vote is gonna count. This is our time. Make it right. It's our fight. It's our time. One more verse. Not gonna let suppression win. This is our time. Whoa, not gonna let suppression win. Yeah, this is our time. Whoa, not gonna let suppression win. This is our time. Make it right. It's our fight. It's our time. Okay, thanks. Now we're going to go to the community greeting. Over to Rebecca.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. It's time for our community greeting. It's wonderful to see you all. Please feel free to turn on your videos and type a message to everyone in chat. I'll try to read as many of the messages as possible as we can.
Okay. Into the group. Thank you, David.
Oh, you bet.
We could have done Old 100th no problem on our own.
Elaine Althorpe, howdy, dear ones. From Steve, what a wonderful message. Thanks, David. David McSparrington, hello from North Amherst. Michael to everyone, thanks, Dave. Rebecca, Steve, hello from John and Gail. Naomi Clayman, so appreciate learning this history together. From Una Scar, let's be little lights and get everyone to vote. Janet Bush, so good to see you all. Allison, David, great job. Okay. Marianne, as always, thank you. Okay. Kim, to everyone, thanks to everyone who's encouraging others to vote. Janet Spongberg, you all look so summery, a little raggedy in a good way. Okay, so now we go to the offering. Let's see.
Okay, I think it's my turn. Great. So since March, we've been directing Sunday morning donations to our local COVID-19 relief fund. And you also may choose to support the Society directly or contribute to our Sanctuary Fund or Arita's GoFundMe page. And so you just get on the USNF webpage and use the blue donate button on the home page. So what we do really matters, and our generosity is making a difference. And there will be links to where you can contribute in chat. While you make your contribution, we're going to listen to a brilliant rap by Yellow Pain called My Vote Don't Count. I think it'll work.
Electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all your nights. You see business in my city, yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes, I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Nobody care about us, and that's why I vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012, I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. Everybody got less food. Still broke, I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it out on my own, ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the man's name, I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. When I'm supposed to do write letters, when I'm supposed to do blame Trump. He ain't never really gave up. Ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just wanna keep us broke. Cause they ain't putting nothing in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complain enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm gonna break it down, because if I don't, you will probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor, or the governor, and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws. We checking it. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch. Yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back to 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws. They the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't want to tell you this. They want you to focus on the president. Now, the third branch is the judicial. That's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in because they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back, grocery store food better, custody of your kids back, homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is because we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Which works better for getting rid of nail fungus? Apple cider vinegar?
Sorry.
All right.
Hold on.
Okay, Steve, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. You're good, Dave.
Okay, so I just want to quickly say that audio might not have been audible for everybody. And if that was the case for you, I strongly urge you to get on the web and check out that rap. It's called My Vote Don't Count by Yellow Pain. When we did it during the run through, we could actually hear it very clearly. But anyway, that's technology. So now we're going to move on. And so go ahead, Rebecca, and pull up the slide with the meditation on it, please.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this picture shows the 7 Unitarian principles in relationship, and any of them could be in the center. Right now, let's spend a couple of minutes with democracy in the center. What thoughts and feelings come up as you contemplate the whole picture and the relationships among the principles? So let's be in silence now. Okay, so Rebecca, I think it's time to move.
Okay.
And Steve will put the spotlight on Susie as we leave the slides.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Susie Macrae, and I'm delighted to be here with you this morning. Thank you, Dave, for asking me to share my reflections on USNF, the vote. The first time that I voted in a presidential election was November 4th, 1980. Young and naive, I took for granted this right. John Anderson did not win, nor did any of my other candidates for the next several presidential elections. However, in 1981, Ronald Reagan became president, and that was the beginning of my activism. Just prior to the 1980 election, a brutal war began in El Salvador. Archbishop Romero was gunned down while leading Mass in San Salvador, and several months later, 4 U.S. nuns were killed. My husband Eric and I became involved in work in solidarity with the people of El Salvador. The U.S. was holding up El Salvador as an example of the success of U.S. foreign policy. However, in order to do so, the U.S. was sending $1 million a day in military aid to a country with a population smaller than Massachusetts. In less than 10 years, 1 million of its 5 million were displaced. This was intolerable. In 1987, as a high school biology teacher, I organized a delegation of teachers to visit El Salvador. We were hosted by the Teachers Union, an incredible group of women who were being targeted by the government for educating the people. Needless to say, being in a country during a civil war, hearing gunfire, and meeting with people taking incredible risks to tell their stories was life-changing. My take at the time was that we needed to fight the injustices happening around the world as a result of U.S. foreign policy. While I worked with the people of El Salvador to help them have free elections, I remained ignorant to voting matters in the U.S. Eric and I moved to Northampton last fall. Having scouted out USNF before our move, I was comforted to know that there was a home for us when we were ready. I was reluctant initially because from past experience, I know how quickly one can become overcommitted. I took it slowly, wanting to make sure that whatever I chose to do in Northampton would feed my soul. But it was hard to sit still with the current state of affairs. How can we prioritize concern for the environment when people are suffering? But if we don't take care of the environment, people will ultimately suffer more. We need to improve education and healthcare, fight for migrant and LGBTQ rights. We need prison reform, police reform. We have watched in horror as many key environmental and human rights laws have been reversed. I began looking for local opportunities to get involved. In November, UUA President Reverend Susan Frederick Gray wrote a piece in the UU World magazine about UU the Vote. When the UU the Vote campaign was launched in January and over 25 people came together at USNF, I had my answer, at least for the near term. If we're going to solve any of these problems, we need to win big in 2020. In Susan Frederick Gray's words, these are difficult and dangerous times. One of the challenges is that in times of change and uncertainty, there is a tendency for people to withdraw and grow fearful. This is why the rhetoric of hate, scarcity, and isolation grows in this country. However, it is exactly in such times that we need bold spiritual imagination and audacious leaders and communities that are showing a new way forward. For Unitarian Universalists, this is a faithful moral action because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the very heart of our 7 principles. To look at one principle, our 5th, as Dave pointed out in our meditation, it invites us to affirm the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. There's a bit to unpack here. To affirm the right of conscience is to say that we trust in an inner guide that we each possess to help us find the right way, the ethical way to be with each other. We don't make any claim as to the nature and origin of that guide. There are many opinions on that, but we trust and respect what it teaches. And this connects directly to the second half of this principle, that we affirm the use of the democratic process as a way of deciding things that gives each person a say in the deciding. Our dedication to democracy carries with it a deep respect for and belief in the inherent worth of each of us, in a fundamental goodness at our core, and our belief that for all our shortcomings, we are capable of making decisions that will serve and save us all. It is easy, I know, to throw up our hands at the electoral process and not believe that all decisions are being made on everyone's behalf. There is much in the process that's a mess, but we can't simply check out, because when we do, it means that we give over our power and leave the decision-making to others. The late John Lewis wrote in his 2019 book, Across That Bridge, A Vision of Change and the Future of America, ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us in every generation must do our part. However, there seems to be more at stake now than ever before, and I feel like we can't wait. We are less than 100 days away from the most critical elections in our lifetimes. Our UU values of interdependence, democracy, human worth and dignity, the richness of pluralism and diversity, and the right of all peoples to self-determination are on the line. Again, I quote Susan Frederick Gray. When we show up as people of faith with these values front and center, we are offering a viable alternative to narratives and policies of domination, supremacy, scarcity, and exploitation that threaten and diminish our lives and future. Voter mobilization is not just political. For Unitarian Universalists, this is faithful, moral action because democracy and the right of all people to have a voice and a vote are at the very heart of our 7 principles. This work is about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It is about restoring right relationship with the planet. It is about our commitment to justice and equity for all people. We are called to courageously embody the deepest values of our faith with our hearts, bodies, and spirits, while building toward a future in which all are free and thriving. Being part of USNF The Vote has been a rewarding way for me to become part of this faith community. Doing this work grounded in UU principles has made my heart sing. I have learned and gained so much for others. I am grateful for this opportunity and for those that are doing this work with me. Our coordinating team meets weekly and our steering committee meets monthly. We have had over 100 volunteers work writing letters, sending postcards, learning about voter suppression, and supporting Movement Voter Project. Too many individuals to name, but we share them here. Thanks, everybody. And this next slide shows what we have accomplished since January. Your energy and commitment has been inspiring. The accomplishments seen here are in italics, and you can see how much you've done. Over 1,400 letters to get out the vote in swing states in just 5 weeks. And in our 3 postcard campaigns that we've completed to date, you wrote and mailed 5,000 cards. We've also had 2 fruitful Zoom meetings, the first supporting Movement Voter Project, and the second and painful but necessary confrontation with the realities of voter suppression. And over the past 2 months, we've had the opportunity to collaborate with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tallahassee. And we hear from Janet that she's planning a joint service with their minister in the fall. While the work you've been doing is outstanding, it's not surprising. We're all part of a truly powerful movement. The current state of democracy in the US has people demanding real, lasting change. Every day, there are protests throughout the country. During the pandemic, people are mobilizing to find new ways to register voters and get out the vote. Thousands of people are making phone calls, texting, writing letters, and postcards. There is much more to be done to create a democracy that we can all believe in. It won't be accomplished in this election, for it is a struggle of many lifetimes, and we must each do our part. In closing, I share these words of the late John Lewis. You are a light. You are the light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Study the path of others to make your way easier and more abundant. Lean toward the whispers of your own heart and discover the universal truth and follow its dictates. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, and the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness. Hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good to overcome evil is already won. Choose confrontation wisely, but when it is your time, don't be afraid to stand up, and speak out against injustice. And if you follow your truth down the road to peace and the affirmation of love, if you shine like a beacon for if you shine like a beacon for all to see, then the poetry of all the great dreamers and philosophers is yours to manifest in a nation, a world community, and a beloved community that is finally at peace with itself. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to close our service with Freedom is Coming, sung by the Marymount Singers. And there'll be a great opportunity for you to sing along. So while Rebecca is queuing up first the picture, there we go, and then the music, I'll just take a few seconds to introduce this. So many of you know this song, which was an anthem for South Africa's anti-apartheid movement. The words are simple. Freedom is coming, yes, I know. That's the first verse. And the second verse is justice is coming, yes, I know. So remember, after the song, we won't have social hour today. Instead, there will be the Q&A session about the annual meeting. You'll get to that session by clicking on the link that will appear in the chat. I'm not seeing chat right now, but you will. And if you have any questions about how to do it, just put those questions in chat. And after the song, Rebecca will be here to help us transition to the Q&A session. Well, I'd like to say right now that it's been great to be with you in this service and to continue to be with you in our work to build a community, a beloved community with peace, liberty, and justice for all.
And mute everybody and turn your picture.
Yes, so please put yourself on mute, close your video, no, keep your video open and sing along with the Marymount Singers.
Oh, freedom! Oh, freedom! Oh, freedom!